and welcome to the channel, and welcome to my 12 Days of Christmas video event. During this event I am making 12 Christmas themed videos between the 1st and 25th of December. Some of them will be painting videos, and some of them will be book videos, and some of them will be baking videos like this. And I think I'll do at least 2 little Christmassy sort of vlog things. This one is going to be about baking bread. Can you see my baby's nose? My little fluffy. I make bread for my family for every family get together we have, basically for a big holiday. I make it for Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, and a few other occasions sometimes when I just really would like some homemade bread. Homemade bread this way, the long way, or May way I guess, is basically a all day long affair. You can do other things while the bread is rising at various times while you have to wait around or while it's baking, but you have to be present in your house pretty much all day long. So I'm going to walk you through it and show you my way of making homemade bread the way that my grandmother taught me, along with a few extra tips and tricks that I've learned from doing it over the years. On with the video. So I've got most of my ingredients laid out here. The most important thing in making bread that's the most difficult is making sure everything is adequately heated so that the yeast can make the bread rise. If your dough is cold, your bread won't rise. So most of what I'm going to be showing you right now is how to get things warm. So I've already put my milk in the pan that I'm going to be using to heat it and put the thermometer in, because I found out in my last baking video that I can't pour milk one-handed. So I'm going to heat this until it gets to 120. I'm going to put some other things in it to also warm up with that. So this is 4 cups of milk, and I'm going to be putting in a cup of sugar and 4 teaspoons of salt and 9 teaspoons of yeast, and the eggs will be separate. So, and I'm going to be putting the full ingredients and everything written out in the description, but I'm also going to tell you as I go. The original recipe calls for a cup of shortening for the fat in this recipe, but I'm going to be substituting half a cup of butter and a 1/4 cup of oil with a 1/4 cup of shortening, which will make a full cup of fat, so it won't mess up the recipe, but it'll taste better, and with the oil it'll be better for you. Now, because I've already turned the heat on this, which I've turned it on to medium, but you might want to turn yours on a little lower and heat it a little slower if you're not used to it, because I'm being a little dangerous cooking it this fast because it might burn on the bottom, but since I'm used to it and I'm aware of it, I need to keep stirring, it's fine. Now, the recipe also calls for me to add the yeast at the same time before I heat it, at the same time as I add the milk and everything, but if you do that and have your yeast in there while it's heating, if you overheat it, you can kill the yeast. And so what I do is I get it to the right temperature, and then if I overheat it, it's fine. I just let it cool down, and then when it is at 120 degrees, I put in the yeast. So, I think I've heated mine up farther than it needs to be, all the way up to 150 degrees. So I'm going to let that cool down before I put in the yeast. And I'm going to work on the eggs instead. How I was taught to warm up eggs is you get yourself some hot water, which this is only medium hot now, so I'll fill that up with more hot water, but to about that level. And then what you're going to do is put the eggs in here and break them all up, and then you're going to set them in there so that they heat through the glass, and then they don't get water in them, and it's a much gentler way of heating them than if you were to put them in the pan. They would probably actually cook that way and you'd have bits of cooked egg in your bread. So this is how we warm the eggs. Now, while that is warming up and this is cooling down, I'm going to get my flour ready. The recipe calls for 12 cups of flour total, but you only put in some before you put in the other mixture, so we're just going to put down a layer of flour. And I also have the recipe written there for how much, what kind of a ratio I found is best. White flour to whole wheat flour, because I like to make partially whole wheat bread. I think it tastes better, and it's also a lot better for you. So I found a ratio that works out really well from a lot of experimenting, so I'll put that in the description. It's about 5 to 7, 7 white, 5 whole wheat. You usually want to have a little more white than whole wheat if you're doing partial, otherwise it gets too coarse. So I've put about 5 cups of whole wheat and 5 cups of white flour in here. So I got my mixture down to the right temperature, so I've added my 9 teaspoons of yeast. I'm going to mix that up and let it sit for just a little bit. I'm going to pour the eggs into it, then I'm going to pour it into my flour. So you stir this up kind of gradually, getting the flour mixed in. Once all the flour that's already in here gets mixed in, it'll be fairly thick. Then you can add another couple of cups of flour, and then you add continuously more flour as you knead that in until it gets to the appropriate doughiness, which I will show you. Now this is what it looks like, the mixed up version of what I just had. So I'm adding some more flour and I'm going to go at it with my hands. But I won't be able to film as much then because I'll have dough on my hand. So what you do to knead is you fold over part of it like this, with 2 hands preferably, but I'm filming, and then you punch it down in the middle. And the more you do this, even after you've worked in all the flour, it works out the air bubble. This is about how doughy it's supposed to be, and this is with 12 cups of flour total. So I'm just going to knead it for a while longer. I've been kneading for about probably 10 minutes, so I'm going to do it just a little more. And it takes a lot of oomph, but you don't necessarily have to smack it at high power. You'll hurt yourself that way. Just push real hard and slow like that. Works real good. And then I'm going to make it into roll. So the next step is to let it rise. And in order to get it to rise, it needs even more heat than we've already put in the dough. So I've turned on the oven, and when you do that, at least on this one, heat comes out the back. Sometimes more heat comes out the front, depending on how your oven works. Leave this here, and I'll tell you when I get back to it how long it takes to rise. But quite a while. Making bread is kind of an all-day thing. So, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's risen. It starts out here, and then we'll see how big it gets when it rises. So it has been about 45 minutes since I made these into rolls, and now they have risen. You can see they've grown enough so they're mostly together, whereas they weren't before. There was space between them, and also they're taller. So now I'm going to stick them in the oven for about 20 minutes. These are looking pretty done from the brownness on top, so I'm going to cut into this one in the very middle, because it's the least likely to be done, and check that it's done all the way through and there's no doughiness. It's really gross when it's doughy. Oh, yeah, that looks pretty done. Excellent.